When you board a commercial flight, you inherently trust the person sitting in the cockpit,
Right,
right?
yeah, of course.
And I mean, you want them to be human. You appreciate a warm, welcoming greeting over the intercom before takeoff, maybe I don't know, a little joke about the weather.
Sure, yeah, you want to know there's a real person flying the plane.
Exactly. But imagine for a moment that you hit severe turbulence. I mean, the plane is violently shaking, the cabin lights are flickering, the beverage cart is rattling against the galley wall.
Uh-huh. A genuinely terrifying situation.
Yeah. And suddenly, the pilot's voice comes over the speaker and says, "Folks, I have no idea what I'm doing right now, and to be honest, I am terrified we might go down."
Wow. Well, I mean, that statement is completely 100% authentic.
Right.
It's a completely honest expression of their internal emotional state in that exact moment.
But it instantly and irreparably destroys the psychological safety of every single passenger on that plane.
Oh, without question. It shatters it entirely.
So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are looking at why everything we've been taught about, bringing your whole self to work might actually be setting you up to fail.
Yeah, it's a huge misconception.
We are stepping away from the hype, the rigid ideologies, and that relentless social media pressure about what a modern leader is supposedly required to be. Instead, we're settling into a calm, thoughtful exploration of a very real, everyday tension. We're looking at the double-edged sword of sharing your emotions.
Exactly. We're going to examine when authenticity acts as a beautiful, necessary bridge to trust, and when, paradoxically, too much emotional openness becomes a heavy, alienating burden.
Right.
We're drawing on behavioral science and some really extensive research into leadership presence and emotional intelligence to, well, really understand how to integrate these concepts into the dynamics of a team.
Because this isn't just theory, right?
No, not at all. It is about the individual moments of insight that allow you to guide a room safely through the challenges you will inevitably face together.
So let's start with that buzzword, the authenticity. Because it feels like everywhere you look, every leadership book, every keynote speech, the prevailing advice is to, just be yourself, bare your soul, let them see your struggles.
Right, right.
But the research we're looking at today suggests that this simplistic, unfiltered understanding of authenticity is actually deeply dangerous advice for anyone in a position of influence.
It is dangerous, yeah, because it completely ignores the fundamental realities of group psychology.
How so?
Well, the behavioral science introduces a concept known as the authenticity paradox.
Okay.
And the paradox is that while vulnerability is absolutely the root of human connection, a rigid definition of authenticity this idea that you must maintain strict coherence between whatever passing anxiety you feel right now and what you say out loud, that severely hinders your ability to lead.
Wait, I want to push back on that immediately, though.
Go for it.
If I'm terrified about, say, a massive organizational restructuring or a major product failure, and I don't tell my team how scared I am, aren't I just lying to them?
It feels that way, I know.
Right, because how is holding back my true feelings authentic at all? Isn't that just going back to the, I don't know, hyper-stoic, robotic corporate culture of the 1950s?
See, that is the exact trap so many well-meaning leaders fall into.
Really?
Yeah. They think the only alternative to being a robot is to just be a completely open book. But the research points out an incredibly delicate dichotomy that you have to manage.
Which is what?
You're constantly balancing your authority, which is your competence, your expertise, and maintaining a necessary measure of distance against your approachability.
So approachability being like warmth and empathy.
Exactly. Your warmth, your relational connection. When a leader leans way too far into approachability and decides to share all their deep, unfiltered uncertainties, it doesn't empower the team. It actually drains them.
Oh, because they aren't looking for a friend to vent with. They're looking for a guide.
Precisely that. I mean, think about a manager stepping into a brand new role, maybe taking over a team that is already really demoralized.
Right.
If that manager walks in and says, "I'm overwhelmed, I don't know if I'm qualified for this, I'm just as lost as you are," they might think they're building a bridge of relatability.
Yeah, being vulnerable.
But what they have actually done is ask their team to manage their internal emotional landscape. They've shifted the weight of their own insecurity onto the shoulders of people who are looking to them for direction.
Wow. Yeah.
That over-disclosure becomes a literal weight on the team.
It goes right back to that turbulent flight. It's authentic for the pilot to be terrified, but sharing it destroys the passenger's safety.
Exactly. It forces the passengers to comfort the pilot, which is entirely backward.
So, okay, If I'm a leader in a crisis and my heart rate is at 120, how do I know when my sharing has crossed the line? How I know when I've gone from, being relatable and humanizing to becoming a burden that diminishes my competence in the eyes of the room.
To find that line, you really have to pause and ask yourself why you're sharing your emotions in the first place.
Mhm.
This is where a really high level of discernment comes in.
Mm.
If oversharing is detrimental, we still know that being a closed-off robot doesn't work either, right?
Right.
To exert any real influence, to get people to follow you into the unknown, you must balance competence with warmth. But there is a crucial defining distinction between voicing feelings that serve the leader versus voicing feelings that serve the room.
Yeah, I found this part of the research fascinating. When you express a strong emotion, the people in the room are subconsciously interpreting that expression in one of two ways.
Right, selfishness or generosity.
Exactly. They view it as an act of selfishness or an act of generosity. If they view it as selfishness, they just see you as venting. You're preoccupied with yourself, your own stress, your own desire for validation.
You're essentially asking the room to say, no, you're doing great, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they view it as an act of generosity, they feel that you are authentically validating their lived experience.
And that generous validation is the foundation of what the literature calls tough empathy.
Tough empathy. I like that.
Yeah, tough empathy is not the soft, touchy-feely empathy of sitting around validating every single complaint or, spiraling into mutual despair.
Right, it's not a pity party.
Exactly.
Right.
It's giving people what they need to grow, not necessarily what they want in the moment. It requires a leader to fiercely balance respect for the individual with absolute respect for the task at hand.
Let's walk through what that actually looks like in practice. Let's say a major product launch just failed completely.
Okay, tough situation.
The team is exhausted, demoralized. Sympathetic venting would be the leader walking in and saying, "This is awful. I'm so depressed. Corporate set us up to fail. I want to quit."
Right.
That's selfish sharing. It feels good to vent, but it leaves the team stranded in a pit.
But tough empathy, that generous sharing, looks very different. That leader walks in and says, I know we are all feeling incredibly frustrated right now. I am frustrated too. We poured our hearts into this, and we didn't get the result we wanted.
Acknowledging the reality.
Yes. But I also know the caliber of talent in this room, and we are going to figure out exactly what went wrong and how to fix it.
So it's a disciplined internal pause. You have to ask yourself, whose feelings am I actually expressing right now? Mine or theirs?
Exactly.
If you're just offloading your anxiety, you build a wall. If you are voicing the shared concern of the room to show them they are seen, you build a bridge.
That's a great way to put it.
But doing that in real time requires incredible self-regulation. I mean, how does a leader mentally and physically project this balance? How do you project enough warmth to invite others to share safely without sacrificing the internal authority required to lead?
Well, to understand the mechanics of that, we actually have to look at the physiological reality of human connection.
Okay, getting into the science.
Yeah, the behavioral science explores a phenomenon called resonance. Humans are wired to subconsciously register authenticity and warmth in fractions of a second. This isn't some mystical, abstract concept. It is deeply neurological. We have to look at how the limbic system, which is the part of the brain that governs emotion, actually functions.
And the research describes the limbic system as an open loop system, which is just a brilliant way to understand it.
It really is.
Because if you think about your circulatory system, that is a closed loop system, right? Your heart pumps blood, your veins carry it, and it manages itself entirely inside your own body.
It doesn't need someone else's heart rate to know what to do.
Right. It doesn't need external cues to know how to circulate blood, but your emotional circuitry is an open loop system. It requires cues from the outside world to regulate itself.
It literally scans the faces, the postures, and the micro expressions of the people around you to know how to feel. We are biologically programmed to sync our emotional state with the people we're interacting with,
Especially people in authority.
especially people in positions of authority.
This is the mirror effect. The team's brains literally mirror the leader's emotional state.
Yes, exactly.
If you walk into a room bringing chaotic, unmanaged, anxious energy, even if you don't say a single word about being stressed, your team's limbic systems will detect it in milliseconds.
Their blood pressure will actually elevate to match yours.
We mirror your panic. But if you bring a calm, regulated warmth, their neurological state settles, your warmth becomes an invitation for them to breathe.
Which is why cultivating presence and alignment is so critical. If you want to stop your team from mirroring panic, you have to develop a signature voice.
What do you mean by a signature voice?
Well, often under stress, we default to extremes. We either use a driving voice, which is overly aggressive, steamrolls people, and tries to control the room through force.
I think we've all had a boss like that.
Oh, definitely. Or on the flip side, we use a supportive voice, which is too passive, shrinks away from hard truths, and just tries to appease everyone.
Right.
Your signature voice is the balanced center. And finding that center starts with checking your internal narrative. You have to examine your underlying assumptions about your role in that room.
So what does that mean in practice? How do I actually update those assumptions?
It comes down to establishing your internal authority. You see, when leaders overshare or act aggressively, it's usually because they feel like an imposter.
Ah,
They lack an internal understanding of the unique value they bring to the table. If you don't know your own value proposition, you will constantly overcompensate.
like talking too much.
Yes, you talk too much, or you overshare personal details to force a false sense of intimacy.
So the mechanism for fixing this is literally mental conditioning. It's taking 5 minutes before a high-stakes meeting, sitting down, and physically writing out your intention.
Absolutely.
You write, I am not here to have all the answers. I am here to facilitate the best answer. I don't need to prove my intelligence to these people. I need to unlock theirs.
That's the exact shift.
That shift in assumption changes your entire physical posture when you walk through the door. Internal authority is the quiet confidence that prevents the need to prove yourself.
And once you have that internal authority, it completely transforms your communication. You no longer have to rely on what we might call aggressive persuasion.
Right.
You can focus on making your case without steamrolling people. And more importantly, it unlocks a totally different level of listening. The research outlines 3 distinct levels: surface listening, issues-based listening, and emotions-based listening.
Okay, so surface listening is just hearing the words. Like if an employee says, this new software rollout timeline is ridiculous, surface listening just hears the complaint.
Right, you just hear whining.
Yeah. Then issues-based listening cuts through the clutter to find the logistical problem.
Right.
Okay, they are saying we don't have enough bandwidth for the rollout.
Exactly. But emotions-based listening is the master skill.
Tell me more about that.
Emotions-based listening is hearing what is underneath the logistics. It is uncovering the true motivations and the unspoken fears of the room without demeaning their competence. In that software rollout example, the emotions-based listener hears, I am terrified of failing, I am exhausted, and I am scared of letting the team down.
Wow.
When you can listen at that level, you aren't just listening to respond with a counterargument. You are listening to align.
But aligning with that kind of heavy emotion takes a massive toll on the leader.
It does.
Which brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle: managing your energy.
Yeah, this is crucial.
It's about taking absolute responsibility over your reactivity. You have to develop a profound self-awareness of the physical and emotional energy you're bringing into a space. The research actually calls this being a happy warrior.
A happy warrior, I love that term.
You're reassuring the team that whatever challenges come, you have the emotional capacity to handle the rough and tumble reality of the work.
Because if you don't manage that energy, the damage isn't just a bad mood, it is structural.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's so easy to dismiss energy as a soft, kind of unquantifiable concept. But the sources show hard empirical data here.
Very hard data.
When a leader lacks self-regulation, that chaotic energy cascades through the entire company. The leader panics, so the team loses psychological safety. Because they don't feel safe, communication shuts down.
People start hiding their mistakes.
Exactly. They hide their errors to avoid the leader's reactivity. That leads to infighting, lost talent, and ultimately measurable drops in yearly earnings. Teams led by individuals who cannot regulate their disruptive impulses underperform significantly.
It is a direct line from the leader's internal emotional regulation to the organization's financial health. You are the regulating force in the room.
In corporate circles, people love to use that old cliche, a leader is a thermostat, not a thermometer.
Sure, we've all heard that.
But honestly, given the stakes here, I think a better analogy is structural engineering.
Okay, how so?
When you're managing your energy, you're like the seismic base isolators under a skyscraper during an earthquake.
Oh, I see.
Those massive shock absorbers, they don't pretend the earthquake isn't happening. They don't magically stop the ground from shaking. But they absorb the violent kinetic energy from the earth, desiccating it so that the floors above don't shatter.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
When you take responsibility for your energy, you become the shock absorber for your team. You acknowledge the crisis, but you don't pass the violent shaking up the chain to your people.
You're absorbing the panic so that the collective intelligence of the team can remain intact to actually solve the problem. You use your warmth and your regulated presence to open up the room. You give others the permission and the safety to share their lived experiences, knowing that the foundation is secure.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
We've looked at the paradox of authenticity, the critical difference between venting and tough empathy, the neurology of the mirror effect, and, the practices of internal authority, deep listening, and energy regulation.
Right.
But intellectual understanding of these concepts isn't enough, is it?
It isn't. Not at all. Leadership presence is not a theoretical exercise. It isn't just about how you look or how articulately you speak.
What is it then?
It is fundamentally about what you do with the space you occupy. It's about whether your physical and emotional presence opens up a room or shuts it down.
Yeah.
So, before we conclude, I want to gently stop the intellectual analysis. Let's take a moment to step away from the frameworks and the data and just sit with the reality of your own leadership. I want to invite you to take 5 to 10 seconds of silence right now, wherever you are. Just pause.
Take a breath.
Exactly. Just silence.
Just sit with it for a moment.
Right. Now, out of that quiet, I want to ask you a grounded reflection question. Think about the next time you walk into a difficult meeting. When you share your emotions with your team, are you building a bridge for them to cross, or are you asking them to carry your weight?
That is the core realization, isn't it? Authenticity is not about maintaining a rigid, unchanging self that blurts out every passing anxiety in the name of honesty.
No, not at all.
True authenticity in leadership is an adaptive, deeply responsible practice. It is about using your presence, your internal authority, and your warmth as an invitation rather than a burden.
It requires you to be fiercely committed to the people relying on you. And that adaptation, that willingness to change how you express yourself, that's a sign of profound growth, not phoniness.
So here's our gentle invitation for you this week. Bring this insight into your daily interactions and your community dialogue. Pay attention to the physical reality of your presence. Notice your energy when you walk through the door or log onto a call.
Absolutely.
Are you acting as that seismic shock absorber, or are you amplifying the tremors? Practice that third level of emotions-based listening. Focus on resonance, on reading the open loop system of your team, and providing the calm they need to regulate.
And as you practice this, I want to leave you with one final fascinating detail from the research to just mull over.
I'd love to hear it.
They observed a group of executives who were transitioning into much larger, more complex roles. They identified a subset of these leaders that they called the chameleons.
The chameleons.
Yeah. These were individuals who quickly recognized that their old, comfortable styles of leadership, the behaviors that felt most natural to them, were no longer serving their new, broader teams.
Ah, I see.
So instead of clinging to a rigid definition of their authentic self, they actively borrowed tactics from others. They observed leaders they admired, they experimented with new ways of speaking, they adjusted their presence.
Wow.
They essentially faked new styles until they found what worked organically for them and for their people.
They practiced responsibility over their own comfort.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it forces us to ask a challenging question. Is it possible that the most authentic version of your leadership isn't the one that feels the most comfortable to your ego right now?
That's powerful.
Right. Is it possible that true authenticity is the version of you that is willing to adapt, stretch, and even feel a little uncomfortable in order to best serve the people who are relying on you?
It's about honoring the passengers on your flight. You don't need to hand them the controls. You don't need to share every fear you have about the turbulence in the dark.
Exactly.
You just need to have the internal authority to manage your own anxiety, the discernment to speak generously to their needs, and the steady, regulated presence to land the plane safely. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Take care.